Hello, my name is Preston Grau, and I am a game developer currently living in Nashville, Tennessee. I have worked with game engines like Unity, Unreal Engine, and GameMaker Studio, coding in C# and C++. I work with both 2D and 3D games, and I especially enjoy making the gameplay experience as good as it can be. In this video, I'd love for you to get to know me and my experience a little better, as well as show you some of my recent projects. The first project I want to share with you is a 3D third-person adventure game prototype, which I like to refer to as Capsule Boy. This game was a lot of fun to work on because I had full creative liberty. From start to finish, I was in charge of creating everything in the game, including the music. I learned a lot about working with cameras as well as starting fresh in a 3D environment. Since I started from scratch, I was able to come up with how the player would move around and interact with the world. I have always especially loved 3D adventure games like the Legend of Zelda series as well as the Elder Scrolls, which inspired some of the controls in this prototype. I also took some inspiration from 3D platformers like Banjo-Kazooie. Much like in Banjo-Kazooie, once you do certain things, you gain new abilities. In this game, when you collect this yellow orb, you are now able to double jump. I had a challenge getting the character to move the way I wanted. It would not change directions when I needed it to. I solved this issue by using transform direction based on the game object's direction to get it to go straight in the direction it was facing. In level 2, we find some enemies. I made the enemies so that once the player gets in a certain range, the enemy begins to follow them. Once the enemy is close enough to the player, they will stop and attack instead. Also, if the player were to move out of the enemy's range, they would stop following the player. I made a simple animation for attacking that also toggles the collider on the sword so that it can only hit things when the player is attacking. Here we can see that new items can appear after you beat the enemies. I wanted to make this final level feel bigger and more exciting than the others, so I made the terrain and applied some textures from Unity's standard assets. And I wanted to give some of the signs a little personality because I always enjoy when games have personality where you wouldn't expect it. After the player beats all the enemies in the forest, an orb will appear over the sign from earlier. I like for the player to explore the world a bit to figure out things on their own, so I did not outright tell them where there would be an orb or how to make it appear. I also wanted the player to have a bit of a floaty feel because it was inspired by 3D platformers, so I didn't make the gravity feel too heavy. I wanted to include a way for the player to get information, so I decided to implement a dialogue system with these signs. I loved getting to come up with 3 separate levels and think about what enemies and challenges the main player would face. I know that I have both of the orbs, so now I'm going to find Spiral Valley. I didn't want to directly point out where Spiral Valley is because once again, I want the player to explore. And once you're in Spiral Valley, you'll know, because it's very spirally. And here we have the end of the game. This is the final portal. The second project I want to share is the game my teammate and I made at the Global Game Jam 2019. This is a 2D top-down survival type game where you have to collect items in order to survive. The air outside is toxic, so first our player will need to collect items to make the gas mask. In order to survive, they must collect the gas mask pieces and craft them at home, hence the name. When the player is outside of their home, their health decreases until they eventually die. My teammate Garrett Ward did the artwork as well as the music, and I focused more on programming the gameplay. We liked that the cheery sound of the name, Crafting at Home, clashed with the dystopian feel. Being inside the house will cause the player's health to regenerate so that they can go back out. And once they have the gas mask, their health will decrease at a slower rate so that they can spend more time outside. I created a camera script that would pan over to new sections of the map once the player entered them, similar to games like The Legend of Zelda. One challenge we had with the camera was that when the player is inside the home, the camera would want to pan over to where the player was, since the inside of the home was away from the play space. This was fixed by adding another camera at the location of inside the house, and we enabled and disabled the cameras accordingly. And once the player collects everything they need to survive, like food, medicine, and video games, and they make it back inside their house, they win. I'm very passionate about video games. I love playing through games that are artfully made, and I strive to make games even better through programming, which I think is the base of how the player experiences the game and what starts their immersion. If you'd like to see more about me and my projects, take a look at my website, PrestonGrau.com.